What up? And welcome to SimWorld. Today is Tuesday morning, July 22nd. We've got plenty to get to. We've got two stops in LA, both at the collegiate and the pro level that we'll talk about. And we've also got some news out of Duke that feels surprising. But we're gonna talk about all of that. Let's start with the SWBA, and that's where Chris Paul, returning to the Los Angeles Clippers, where he spent a good chunk of his career, as he signs a minimum deal to join the Clippers for a team that is reloading with veterans that are honestly pretty dang well positioned to contend in a very, very deep Western Conference. The moves of the summer for the Clippers, they've added veterans. They've added the 32-year-old Bradley Beal. They've added the 37-year-old Chris Paul, and they've added the now 37-year-old Brook Lopez, and the now 40-year-old Chris Paul. This team is all in on a very short window. And while the names are good, and I think the skill set for these guys is good, I think there's very real reason to look at this group and say, are we sure that this is a team that can contend? Because if we just watched the playoffs a season ago, talking about playoffs, Indiana Pacers, that was a young team, a young mid-20s, late 20s basketball team that made a deep run. The Oklahoma City Thunder, I think they were the youngest team, right, in the SWBA season ago. And so while the Clippers are adding a lot of really nice pieces, and I think roster-wise, this team has 7-8 guys that you feel probably pretty good about, right? You've got Batum, who's, by the way, 36. We're just going in order here of alphabetical. Batum, Beal, and Bogdanovich are all rotation guys right off the bat. Okay, there's your three. John Collins, who they added this summer, 27-year-old. Believe it or not, they went with a sub-30-year-old guy. He's going to be in the rotation. Chris Dunn, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Brook Lopez, Chris Paul is 8, and then Ivica Zubac is 10. 10 guys. That's not counting Derrick Jones Jr., who I think is a guy that probably can start at the 4. They have 10 or 11 rotation-level guys. And I think in the first round, this is a team that you probably look at and say, we're really confident in this. And I really like this team for a postseason run. What I am concerned about with this group is what happens when the games start being every other day. And that's the one confusing part about the SWBA playoffs that I do not understand, is that these games are played every other day. The biggest games of the season, there's no break. But in the first round, because the league is so focused on getting every single game on national television, you go 2-3 days without playing in between games in that first round series. I think it makes no sense. But once we get to the most important games of the season, where we're defending, or we're deciding and learning who's going to be the champion, you're playing every other day. And that does not really lend itself well for veteran rosters. Teams that are going to rely heavily on Kawhi Leonard at age 34, who finally had a healthy season and lost in 7 last season to Denver. The 40-year-old Chris Paul, who has broken down even when he wasn't 40 years old. Brook Lopez, who still does a lot of great things, but at 37 kind of looked his age last season. So I like the move to add Chris Paul. What gives me some reservation is, do we believe that this team is going to be able to last in the gauntlet, in the marathon of the postseason? I don't know that they're not going to be able to. But this is I should add this. All of these moves I think are really, really good. You needed another playmaker that can score with the basketball in his hands. That's not Kawhi Leonard, and that's not James Harden, and you got that in Bradley Beal. You need a backup guy that can continue to keep the game rolling, that can keep the pace of the game moving, and you got that in Chris Paul. You needed a stretch big to back up Ivica Zubac to give you another look offensively, but he can also protect the paint. You got that in Brook Lopez. You need some athleticism on the wing that can be really good in pick and roll, that can operate off of attention drawn to James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, and you got that in John Collins. Already on this roster, you got scoring and defense, and you're checking a lot of boxes for the Clippers. And so I think you're going to see, and we probably have already, right, a lot of love being shown to the Clippers for this move. Where I get questioning is, does this team have the availability at the end of the season? Now, you start the year with 11 rotation level guys, at least 11 guys that I would consider rotation level. That gives you a margin for error, right? We've talked about this a lot. The SWBA is a 9-man playoff rotation. Sometimes that ninth man is getting like 7 to 10 minutes, right? So really it's 8.5 man. They have the wiggle room where if an injury pops up or if a guy can't stay healthy, you can still be in that 8 to 9 man rotation zone. But there's just so many guys on this Clippers team that you now have to navigate injuries. And these are guys that have had injuries. Either they have had injury past in Kawhi and Chris Paul, or they've started to look their age in a Brook Lopez, right? So great moves, a lot of headline grabbing moves for the Clippers, and you love to win the summer. My hesitancy, and I think they've had a really good summer, but my hesitancy is, are they going to win when it matters most? And I don't know if they're going to have the availability, all their guys healthy to do that. Talking about winning most, let's go to college basketball. UCLA, our defending champs. And the question, do we think that the UCLA Bruins can repeat? Now, over the last 3 seasons, we've had the UConn Huskies made it to 2 straight national championship games. And then with UCLA and Xavier playing, sorry, Xavier, I don't think that you're getting back to the national championship game, but UCLA trying to find a similar pathway that UConn did, right? They win a national championship, a lot of question marks. Could they do it again? They fall 1 game short when they fall to Miami in the national championship game. UCLA now is on the front end of that. So can they get back there? And I'm skeptical. You lost your 2 leading scorers. You lost the best player, according to many, one of the best players in the country in Jalen Snow. Maybe the best three-point shooter in the country that's not named Trey Turner and Gerald Carroll. And you have to find a way to replace that. And there's going to be huge, huge shoes to fill right now with from guys like Blaine Kidd, who is their only scorer coming back that averaged double-digit scoring. You've got J.J. Ortega. Those guys are a 6'2", 200 pounds, and 6'2", 198. So 2 small guards that are your primary scorers coming back. And I think Blaine Kidd had a better season last year. J.J. Ortega is more of a table setter, 4.5 assists last year. Blaine Kidd's more of a scorer at the next level, 50%, 40% from deep. And from the field in opposite directions there, and then 73 from the line. So you got a score, and you got a guy that can dish the ball. The problem is that they're both 6'2", and you can get away with that in college basketball. We've talked about this, right? SMU, right, is the big team that we talked about. They might be playing 3 to 4 6'3", 6'4" guys at a time, and that might be the right move. I'm very skeptical though of UCLA because you don't need to have a number 1 pick, a top pick to win a national championship. UCLA happened to, but if you look Alabama, right, you got a lottery pick. Like, you don't need the best player in the country to win a national championship game, but it does help. Xavier 1 game away, SMU 2 wins away from winning a national championship. They did not have a guy that we would expect to be a top 5 pick, or was not a top 5 pick in the case of Xavier. So you don't need that. But I am very skeptical about UCLA's offense. Where does the offense come from? Is it going to be from a Koya Monroe, who's stepping in as a rookie? Is it going to be from Jordan Bamford or Wilson Lamb? Well, those guys, the last 2, both 6'3". So you this redundancy of lack of size. We talked about South Carolina yesterday, where they have 1 dude, right, under 6'6". This roster has a 6'2" J.J. Ortega, a 6'1" Edmund Nesbitt, a 6'3" Wilson Lamb, a 6'2" Blaine Kidd, 6'4" Quota Grindle, 6'1" Mike Felds, 6'3" Jordan Bamford. It's a small basketball team, and you have to play into that. And Mick Cronin has proven, now with a national championship to back that up, has proven that he can adapt with what he has. And I would expect to see UCLA play a very up-tempo, fast game. Maybe it's a lot of zone defense on the back end to hide some of the lack of size they have, because you're not going to be able to take this team and say, well, we're not going to play all 6 of these guys, these 6'2" guys, 6'3" guys. You're going to have to, right? Because there's just a lack of depth in other positions. Koya Monroe, I think, is going to get a ton of playing time on the wing as a freshman, because partially he deserves to be there, but also partially because they don't have any other choice. Other guys on this, Samai Domingos, didn't play at all, but he's the only guy so their only guys 6'9" and above are Domingos, Mitchell Marison Cole, and Franklin Tyson. There's good parts of those games, but none of those guys played significant roles on offense. The only one that played somewhat of a role was Franklin Tyson, kind of serving as your not kind of, he was serving as your starting center, but he shot 49%. Your big man shot 49%. That's not sustainable. 7 foot 250 center shooting 40. Like, that guy's got to be 59 plus if you're coming in with that. So I'm skeptical. I mean, it's not you don't get many repeats in college basketball. So to sit here and say I don't think UCLA is going to repeat, that shouldn't be a hot take. But I'm wondering just how far this team can go, because the Pac-12 is still a good conference, and I'm gonna save who I think will be the number one until we can reunite with Sniper and go through and finish our series of going to every single conference and picking who could be there. But there's other big talent in other spots. Arizona's got Corey Yams, Cal's got Jason Tata, USC's got Gabe Pope. There's a lot of really good pieces in other parts of the Pac-12, and I don't know if those really good pieces are in UCLA. And let's wrap this thing up. Let's go to Duke. And the news over the last 24 hours, this one coming from reporting done by Jason Candell of CBS Sports, is that this is as I try to find the tweet, a prove-it season, it appears. A make-or-break year, quoting the tweet, with key boosters growing restless of John Shire. I would ask, what exactly are we growing restless of? Are we growing restless of a team that for much of the season a year ago was the presumed number one team in the country? We're going to back off of this team because they've lost in the round of 32 in 3 straight years? I can understand that there might be frustration, especially for a program like Duke, that you have national championship aspirations. But let's look around last season. Let's use context in Hoopsteria a year ago. I'm not going to break news here because you all have been here. Number one seeds, one of them made it out of the first weekend. Virginia Tech, Texas, gone right away. Duke, obviously, gone in the second round. Alabama, the only number one seed to make it out of the opening weekend, let alone make it to the quad. And so this concern over this restlessness, to me, that seems misguided. That seems short-sighted. That's not a thing that Duke does. That's a thing that Kentucky does, right? And even then, I mean, John Calipari stayed on long time in Kentucky, despite being a guy that was not winning at the end of it, right? He only had the one national championship. But to me, this seems idiotic because Duke, especially a blue blood, you need to exude stability. And John Shire has had stability for this team. Okay, not only do you make it to the assumed number one team pretty much all season long last season, but you're a program that's had really good seasons in the recent past, right? And so as I'm just checking, because I want to fact check something, I don't believe, I'm trying to get this up as we do this in live time, and I apologize. So Duke 2 years ago lost to Tennessee in the second round. And this was not a good Duke basketball team, we should add. This was a team that struggled, that was kind of waiting for new blood to come in. And when they came in, they were a 30-plus win team, one of the best teams in the country that lost to a St. Mary's team that had actually had let's not take this away from St. Mary's. St. Mary's was a squad that was in the top 25 for much of the season, kind of didn't play well in conference play, in a better conference than they had been in before, and maybe just got hot at the right time. Kai Newby's still a really good basketball player for St. Mary's. They had a good run. They had a good game, and they beat Duke. To say that's where this thing kind of falls apart, to me, seems exceptionally short-sighted. And it's anti-Duke in terms of how they've normally operated, which shouldn't be the only way you operate. If things aren't going well, you should be willing to mix things up. North Carolina is a team that has often been surrounded by that. But to have it lay so simply on, well, for 3 straight years we haven't made it out of the second round. That's happened a lot for a lot of programs, a lot of good national championship winning programs. UCLA is a team that had their fair share of struggles before finally breaking through. I mean, they got embarrassed in the Super 16 2 seasons ago. They didn't roll over. They didn't fire their head coach. And what do? They took the learnings. They went and they got a national championship the following season. Duke shouldn't be making these knee-jerk reactions. It's surprising that they seems like they're headed in that way. It's not. It's a very non-Duke, off-brand move for them to already be thinking, well, if we don't make a deep run, we need a new guy at the helm. That's not Duke, and it shouldn't be Duke. See the long game. See stability, and know you got one of the best college basketball coaches in the country, and you can still win games right now with him there. And to have it be sitting here thinking, something in my mouth, thinking that this is a bad way forward, that's short-sighted. And this is a good coach and a good program that might have a decent season ahead. I think they could be a pretty good player in the ACC. Maybe it's a bold take with these two 7-foot big men, but there's a legitimate case for this group to be talented this season. Regardless of the run that they may or may not make, should not be the determination of John Shire's future. We're back tomorrow morning on SimWorld TV. Appreciate you tuning in here with the only place you can see the game, be the game.